2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
Let's talk about suicide.
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Therapy Brothers podcast. Today, it is just one brother. It's just me, Brannon. I think Tyler's done a lot more episodes on his own, and so I owe him. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about something that might be hard to talk about, but I think something that's really important to talk about. And it hits home for me pretty closely for several reasons, and I'm going to share that with you and talk about why. When you saw the title of this episode, it maybe wasn't something that was like, wow, that's exciting to listen to. That's something that I want to think about. And I know that it's not a fun topic, and I know that it's not a fun thing to think about, but at the same time, I believe it's something that we need to talk about, and it's something that we need to continue to bring to the surface and address on different levels. And I'm going to talk about that today. What's going on here? I live in a place where suicide is all too common. My daughter going to school, she's had a couple of people just this year in her school who have committed suicide. There's been a wave lately of parents of the kids at my daughter's school who have committed suicide. I think there's been 4 or 5 this year. Working with individuals, working with couples, people get in places where there's a lot of hopelessness. They feel stuck. They feel like there's no way out. And when they get to those places, then suicidality starts to come up. And, I remember, well, of course I remember this. It's probably 11 years ago. I did a really intense couple session, and We were confronting some things, and it was hard. It was a really difficult session, and it seemed to go okay. But then that night, the guy went home and overdosed. And it rocked my world because it made me question everything about everything I did in that session. But more than anything, it just made me sad. Sad for him, sad for his wife, all of those things. My mom and her some of her family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, they went and did a long walk across the desert a week ago to bring up suicide prevention and to talk about it. And the reason is because in my family, suicidality is very common, unfortunately. I have a cousin who's committed suicide. I have another cousin who has had several attempts. I have an uncle who's committed suicide. And it's something that is really hard for us in our family and hits home really closely. I remember when I was a really young kid, one of my first memories, I don't know how old I was, maybe I was 4 years old, but I remember my mom really stressed out, and something was going on. I didn't know what. But that was the night that my uncle took his life. So one of my earliest childhood memories was just the pain and the sadness and the intensity around that event. Why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all this because it really matters to me. It matters to me a lot. And I think if we could look at some things and make some changes and shift some things, maybe things could improve. I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday who's been suicidal in his life. And he was saying, when you get to those depths, you don't understand it unless you've been there. You don't get it unless you've been there. And I think that's one of the issues is, a lot of people who are suicidal, one, they're either hiding it, or two, those who they are talking to about it don't actually understand what they're saying, don't understand how much pain they're actually in. I see suicidality, that there's different types of it. There's the type where somebody is in so much pain that they just want an escape. They just want out. They want to not feel all of the pain and the hopelessness anymore. But I also see the other type, which is a cry for help, a cry for significance. They want people to run to them, to care for them, to say, don't do it, we love you. And to me, though, it's very different. And I'm not saying, one is better than the other or anything like that, but it's a very different thing. Somebody in their silence, in their pain, they're not really thinking about how much everyone will miss them and this, and they're just in that pain. And then there's someone who uses that threat for power, for significance, for being seen and caretook for. Neither one is good. Neither one is okay. And that person who's crying out for help and wanting to be seen, they're saying that they're in a lot of pain too. Right? Every year, we lose approximately 800,000 young people to suicide. Yeah, that number was accurate. 800,000. 15 to 29-year-olds commit suicide. That number is way too high. That's the second leading cause of death for that age range. 15 to 29-year-olds. I don't know what the leading cause is. I would guess something that has to do with suicide too, something like drug overdose. So it begs the question as to why. Like how have we gotten here, and why? Why are the numbers so high? Me living in where I live, and it seems like suicide, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but it seems like suicide is more prevalent around where I live. I can theorize what's going on. There's a high demand religion. There is a culture of perfectionism. There are standards to meet. And many people, especially many young people, feel like they just don't have what it takes to live up to what they need to live up to. And they're constantly living in this state of deficiency of, I'm broken, I'm not enough as I am. If people really knew me, they wouldn't love me or accept me. God doesn't love and accept me because of my sins. I need to have high enough grades and things so that I can get into certain schools. And just feeling like I can't do it. I'm not good enough. A lot of pressure is there to fall into a certain box and be a certain thing so that you're okay. I think that, coupled with an overall just kind of the way that society's going, a lack of health and good mental health practices. Instead of riding our bikes, we just numb out on screens all day long. We eat junk, which causes inflammation, which makes us feel horrible. And then mix that with social media that's telling you that you should be fit. And like all this stuff put together is just like, ugh, I'm not living. I'm not thriving. And I feel horrible and I feel hopeless. I'm going to go down a list here of the signs. Like, what I want to go through are the things that people have if they are at risk of suicide. And if they have these things, it's scary, because these things, oftentimes, if there's multiple of these things, then suicidality is a real risk. So, one of the things that I'll get to that in just a minute, that list, but I want to say this. One of the things they talk about for suicide prevention is taking away the means to take your own life. And so things like, if you're suicidal, it's not smart to hang around a loaded gun, right? If you're suicidal, that bottle of pills, like, it might be a bad idea to just have them there in your cupboard and easy access to them. And I think that's true. I think that's absolutely smart to, and I've asked people as a therapist, I get very specific. What guns do you have in your house? How much access do you have to them? What have you thought about, and how would you do it? And do you have access to the means to do it? Now, that is suicide prevention. But to me, that's like just stopping somebody from actually doing it is not nearly enough to address the issue. Like, we gotta ask the question, why are they in that place emotionally and spiritually where they're feeling like they want to kill themselves? Why are they there? How did they get there? And how do we address the things so that they don't stay in that place anymore? We don't just want to prevent them from killing themselves. We want to help them live. We want to help them thrive. We want to help each other live and thrive. All right, here's the list that puts somebody at risk. One of the biggest risks is that they've had a previous attempt. So if they've had a previous attempt, it's dangerous if they're still suicidal. The next thing is that there's a history of mental illness. And so if there's depression, if there's a bipolar, borderline, I could go down the list, but if there's a history of mental illness issues, then suicidality, the risks of suicide increase. And I think that's kind of obvious. Another one is there's chronic pain, which would make sense. Like we're talking physical pain, back pain, whatever it is. If you're in chronic pain, then you start thinking about escaping that pain. And like I said, people can have several of these. If they have legal problems, that increases the risk of suicide. You know, things that they get into that they just think, oh, what's my way out here? How do I get out of this? I have several felonies. I can't get a job. I'm looking at going to jail again. Like I'm on probation forever. Like I can't get out of this. You know, you mix that with a little bit of chronic pain and a mental illness, so that they're really in danger. Job or financial problems. Again, feeling stuck, not knowing what to do. Impulsive and aggressive tendencies. Men, I don't know the statistic for sure, but it's more than 2 to 1, I think, are successful at completion of suicide over women. And that the reason for that is this one, is that they are more violent. They are more aggressive with the way that they go about it. I believe that white males are the highest number for suicide, which is interesting if you think about it. What's going on with white males these days? Not to say that other demographics don't struggle, but something about the white male right now is pushing them into a lot of these issues and problems, which are leading to this hopelessness. Substance use, obviously not helpful when it comes to suicide prevention. But it's such a catch-22 because on one hand, those substances are numbing all the pain. And on another hand, they're causing a lot of the pain. So it's addiction. It's being stuck in that. On one hand, I can't get rid of it because I need it because I don't want to deal with all my pain. On the other hand, it's taking my life away from me. All the consequences are coming. So like I think of the story I told, that guy was getting sober. That guy had been sober for a couple months. And what's interesting about that is I remember hearing things like, gosh, I'm finally feeling all my feelings that I haven't felt for so long. And it's hard. So in his sobriety, in his recovery work, that's what pushed him over the edge for suicide. And then the last thing is that you have unresolved past trauma. So if there's past abuse, wounds, issues that you haven't dealt with, that can lead to suicide. Which makes sense. There's stuff inside of you that's eating at you. That's, there's demons in there. And if you haven't processed your trauma, then that stuff stays in you until you either process your trauma. or escape the pain. All right, so I'm going to run down these really quickly one more time. Previous attempt, history of mental health issues, chronic pain, legal problems, financial problems, impulsive or aggressive tendencies, substance use, and undealt with past trauma. Okay, so if you have a family member or a friend who has mentioned suicidality and they have these things, then take them serious, please. Now, something I want to talk about with this is prevention. But before I really get into prevention, I'm going to say a hard truth, which is really difficult. If somebody really wants to do it, they can. That we can't take the free will away from somebody, even when it comes to this. And I think the reason I say that is because family members and friends so often put so much of the blame on themselves. And they just think, if only, if I could have done this, if I could have done that. I wish that I would have said this, or I wish that I would have, tried harder with the relationship, or whatever it is. And you know what? Maybe you could have done all those things. And at the same time, that person has their own free will. You can't completely stop anybody from that decision. I guess you could lock them up or something. You could commit them to a hospital. That's happened. But even then, right? So that's not a fun reality, but the reason why it's important to understand that is so that you can do the best that you possibly can and love that person as much as you possibly can. But at the same time, understand that if something bad were to happen, that it is not your fault. I've heard horrific stories of, like, I hesitate telling these stories, but I'm gonna tell one story of a couple. They got in a big fight, and he was saying to her, like, he can never live up to her standards and be good enough for her, and then he pulled out a gun and took his life. Now, he's literally in that moment trying to put blame on her, and it's still not her fault at all. Like, that is not her fault. We get in these interpersonal situations where we feel responsible, and this is where the boundaries thing really comes into play. We feel responsible to make sure that we can caretake for others. And sometimes a suicidal person will try to wrap you up in that because the ultimate fear is that they might take their own life. And I think it's important to understand that you having those boundaries is still important. I was working with a young kid. He was probably 23, 24 years old, who was struggling with drugs and alcohol. His parents didn't want him to do it in their house. They asked him to, they told him, they said, if you use again in our home, we're going to ask you to leave. And they decided to do that because they loved him. It was a hard decision for them. And sure enough, he relapsed, got kicked out of the house, committed suicide that day. That's not mom and dad's fault. They were fighting for him. They were doing the best they could for him. All right. So when I talk about prevention, I want you to know that you don't have complete control and you don't have choice for other people. So there's three things that really work for somebody who's struggling. And the first one is just connection. And this is a hard one because somebody who is actively suicidal, oftentimes they're depressed and they're isolating. So they're not showing exactly how they're feeling sometimes. Sometimes they will, sometimes they'll tell you. But this is why, like in our training as therapists, they train us to ask those direct questions and to dig in pretty quickly and pretty deeply with people. So if someone's kind of saying something like, I just don't know if I want to live anymore, I won't just like hear that and be like, oh, well, yeah, like that's hard. No. I take that really seriously. Tell me more about that. Have you had a lot of thoughts about that? What type of thoughts have you had? How far have you taken it? Have you ever made a plan? Have you ever done anything toward that plan? Like, have you ever like went and looked for the bottle of pills? I don't say like that to them, but I'm like, that's that question I'm trying to ask. They might say, yeah, I went into my bathroom and looked, and okay. So what I'm assessing in that moment is how serious is this person? And I'm asking these direct questions because they won't answer anybody and they won't tell anybody these things unless they're asked directly. And I'm assessing how serious the suicidality is. They need connection. They need somebody who's saying, I care, I want to listen. Tell me, open up, where are you at? I want to know. All right. And I know that can be hard. It can be hard with kids because kids oftentimes will isolate in their feelings. They don't feel safe with mom and dad, so they don't open up. And I've seen it really be helpful for teenagers to have a good therapist that they can open up to outside of mom and dad. Whoever it is, they just need connection. People need connection, not just teenagers, everybody. They need collaboration between a system that is helping them, okay? So whether it's teachers, friends, church members, the community collaborates to help them. How can we show up for this person who's hurting? And they need to know that they have choices in their life. Like if you're stuck with that chronic pain, those legal problems, financial problems, even a mental illness that you're thinking, how do I handle this? You need to know that, hey, I can go and there's always hope. I know there's pain. I know it's really, really hard, but what are my choices to deal with this mental illness? What are my choices to deal with these legal problems? What are my choices to deal with these financial issues or whatever they may be? What are my choices to deal with my past trauma? You can look at your past trauma and say, I don't have any choices. It's me. This is my life. But the reality is you absolutely can go and heal. You absolutely can dig your way out of debt, one penny at a time. But how? What's my choice to do that? I need to know that there's options. So a lot of times this is education, it's mentorship, it's understanding that, someone's been in this position before. I'm not alone in this, and there is a way that I can get out. So connection, collaboration, and choice. We have to look at the bigger issues. We have to look at society as a whole. What's going on? How are we not healthy? Why is there so much shame and secrecy? Why do we live with poor health? Why is there so much pressure to perform? And how can we challenge some of these paradigms that we live under that are giving the outcomes of 800,000, I'll call them kids, killing themselves? Maybe we need to bring in a little more connection to the earth. Maybe we need to get out of our thinking about, I need to look a certain way in order to be good enough. Our body shaming issues, money, sex, like all of these things, we think that there's a box that we have to fit into in order to be okay. And when our life doesn't fall into that place, we then think we're somehow flawed or broken or not okay. Overall, maybe we need to have a society that's more inclusive and accepting of what is and less shaming. I could go on and on about this. If you get anything out of this episode today, and I know this is heavy and this is hard, but if you get anything out of this episode today, if there's somebody in your life that you get that intuitive thought or that intuitive feeling inside of you of like, I should check in with them, then do it. Like, follow through with that. They need a little bit of love. They might not be suicidal, but something inside of you and that intuition is saying connection, like they need it. And it might be uncomfortable for you to reach out. Do it anyways. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them that you're there for them. Tell them that you can hold some of their pain. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it was helpful in some way. If it makes you feel sad, let yourself feel sad. I'm feeling sad right now. I really appreciate you guys listening. You guys are heroes. You guys are people who work on yourself, who don't take hopelessness as an answer, or you wouldn't be listening to this. So I really appreciate you. And until next time, keep on keeping on.